One of the big stories of the week, the global heat warming. London, 104 degrees. Paris, 104 degrees. Temperatures they never see. We had record heat here in Louisiana in June, and we're used to heat. But what it's also done is raise the water temperatures. Lake Pontchartrain, 95 degrees. The Gulf of Mexico also elevated a bit. So Dr. Paul Miller, LSU hurricane specialist, not what you want to hear as we're in an anticipated busy hurricane season, though we haven't seen it yet, and approaching the peak point of that season.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So as people around Louisiana know, August, September, October, those are kind of our peak hurricane months. Even though June and July have been a little bit quiet so far this year, really what feels like quiet compared to the last couple of years is a little bit just closer to normal.
Yeah, and I can hear people saying, oh, well, we haven't seen anything yet, so maybe that means we're off the hook. Not so, huh?
Yeah, that's a little bit of wishful thinking, and I even want to think that way too. But if you actually kind of look at the long-term averages, we actually don't see our first hurricane normally until early August, and that's still about 2 weeks away.
And again, your data for the Gulf of Mexico that was developed by you and the LSU researchers is all pointing to about 6 storms in the Gulf this season.
Yep, absolutely. So we kind of produce our own seasonal forecast using some forecast air temperatures about 4 miles above our heads. And based on those projections, we anticipate 6 storms in the Gulf. It would have been nice to maybe get 1 or 2 of those out of the way in June and July before, the sea surface temperatures really amp up for the rest of the year. Right. But those forecasts remain unchanged, and even some of the broader Atlantic forecasts are still anticipating an active hurricane season.
Can a change in sea surface temperature of even 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees, can that make much of a difference in a hurricane output?
Yeah, well, it absolutely can. And what's probably even more important to the storm is how deep that warm layer extends beneath the water. Right. So sometimes during these big heat blasts, we can really crank up our sea surface temperatures. What can maybe is more important for the hurricane actually is how far beneath the surface that heat is able to progress.
Right, because it churns up the water, and if it's all warm at some depth, that's even worse of a story.
Which is another reason why it's kind of nice to have a few storms earlier in the year, because they're going to promote some of that mixing across the Gulf and take some of those really hot sea surface temperatures and maybe bring up some cooler water from below.
Nice to have that. We haven't had that yet. So what's ahead? Again, there's concern.
Yeah, I mean, we still have an active hurricane season. We have the meat of the season coming up, still ahead of us. Even when we look back at some of the historical analogs, that's kind of another way that we'll forecast storms. We look at years in the past that kind of look similar to our current year, and they were above average as well. So we think there's still some more storms coming down the pike.
As you look at this, is data that can sometimes change as the next few weeks go along? Do you continue to look at things, and can you ever make an adjustment?
So that certainly can happen, although really the way that these forecasts are developed, they'll look at things like sea surface temperatures globally.
Right.
And so the global patterns of sea surface temperatures really don't vary on the scale of 2 to 3 weeks, that kind of thing. So really a lot of the way that those forecasts look now, or that those patterns look now, will still be much the same headed into peak season.
Yeah, you can see I'm looking for any out that we possibly
as are most people
could get. Dr. Paul Miller, thank you so much. Sure appreciate it always.
Yep, absolutely, Andre.